big deal. It looks like, you know, somebody liked Twilight, they made their own stories, they're kind of referencing Twilight. You know, it's a one-off. Well, I don't know how often it does happen, but I do know that there are other instances of sort of fandoms being interrupted or upended by this sort of thing. About the time that Twilight was popular, I was at a Barnes & Noble and I saw a display of books in Barnes & Noble, and it had the author's name, which was Cassandra Clare. And you're going to notice there's an I here, and in the book that she published, there's not an I in her last name. But there's a reason for that. So the display that I had seen was The City of Bones, and it's part of a series called The Mortal Instruments, written by Cassandra Clare. And Cassandra Clare is also a New York Times best-selling writer. She writes young adult fantasy, not dissimilar actually to the Twilight books in a lot of ways, but the reason that I recognized her name was that I recognized the name Cassandra Clare with an I from fan fiction in a very different fandom than Twilight. And this might be the most intense and obsessive fandom of all, which is Harry Potter. So I had heard of Cassandra Clare and actually read one of her fictions, which I'll talk about, but I did not know until seeing that she had become a published author that there was a lot of drama that came before that, and that's all related to fan fiction. Yes, fan fiction, lots and lots of drama, you guys. So in 2000 or 2001, Cassandra Clare was the pen name of someone that was writing a series of stories based in the Harry Potter universe called the Draco Trilogy. So keep this in mind. And they were initially published on, yes, fanfiction.net, ff.net. And this was in 2001, and at one point in 2001, the first Draco story was removed from fanfiction.net, and Cassandra Clare was banned from fanfiction.net for plagiarism. The details of that are that she had actually been found to be plagiarizing passages from an out-of-print fantasy writer by the name of Pamela Dean, and this was enough of a problem that she got banned. So the case with the Draco Trilogy was that apparently there were quotes and passages that were taken, intentionally or not, from other writers, fantasy, sci-fi. So I read the first Draco story, which is called like Draco Dormiens, I guess it was about 2005, I really don't know. And Cassandra Clare wrote some sequels to it, which I did not read. All of this craziness had gone down with fanfiction.net. Her stories had been removed, and they were hosted elsewhere on the internet, but Cassandra Clare, actually got a publishing deal with an actual publisher. And so she was, I think, in the process of removing all of her fan works as much as she could from the internet because she was going to be like a legitimate author. If you do a little Google search, you will see that the Draco Trilogy is still around. I found a PDF version of it just with a Google search, and I didn't download it, but I guess I could read it again if I wanted to. I didn't find the other ones. That doesn't mean they're not out there. I just didn't look deep enough in the Google search. Also, there is there are reviews of the Draco Trilogy stories on Goodreads, which I thought was really weird. I didn't know that people reviewed fan fiction on Goodreads, but apparently it happens. So there we have it. Also, Cassandra Clare had been sued by another writer by the name of Sherilyn Kenyon, who claimed that Cassandra Clare was plagiarizing some of her works, her ideas, and her terms that she used in her urban fantasy. Again, I don't have any knowledge or opinion of that, but the shadow of accusations of plagiarism have fallen onto Cassandra Clare's path now on multiple occasions. I don't know if that's significant. It could be a coincidence. It could be that she just happens to now have that reputation, so people think they can accuse her of it. Again, I don't know. I'm not an expert. However, speaking as someone from the fandom and fan fiction community, I can say I think that there's a lot of issues. The gray areas, yes, but sometimes not so gray. At one point, Cassandra Clare crossed a line, and that line was too far for fanfiction.net. It was too far for the fanfiction community, and this is a community that's entirely focused around writing things about intellectual property that doesn't belong to the writers. So that was the start of Cassandra Clare's career. So when Cassandra Clare had an opportunity to become a published paid writer, she could have changed her name in a way that would disassociate herself completely from any aspect of her issues with fanfiction.net. She could have published under the name of Joan Smith, or, John Smith, or Jose Carrera. I don't know. But she didn't have to publish under the name of Cassandra Clare. She did drop the I, so technically it's not the same name, but it's obviously the same person, and it's very traceable. I don't know. If I was going to start a new publishing career, and I'd previously been accused of plagiarism, I would probably try to distance myself from my previous work as much as possible. Cassandra Clare didn't try to do that. In fact, I think it's pretty obvious she was hoping to bank on her popularity as a fanfiction writer and her notoriety, the notoriety that she achieved as a fanfiction writer that got a lot of attention. She was capitalizing on her success in the fandom, and that's kind of what makes me uncomfortable. She publishes, according to the copy of the book that I checked out, she's publishing with Simon & Schuster, which is a large, experienced, reputable publishing house. They're very familiar with copyright law, plagiarism, all of that. So clearly they would have thought that there was no issue with hiring her under that name. That being said, maybe the executives of Simon & Schuster aren't members of the fan community. Maybe they're not a bunch of nerds that sit around and read fan fiction and therefore have strong opinions about it. Just speculating. It's clear that Cassandra Clare and the executives and decision makers at Simon & Schuster thought that the only bad publicity is no publicity. They thought that having Cassandra Clare's history related to fan fiction and possible plagiarism must have been an advantage and not a disadvantage. It was calculated, I think, to use that name. She didn't have to choose to publish with Simon & Schuster with the same name as she had published on fanfiction.net and other places on the internet, and she did. So clearly it was intentional. Both E.L. James and Cassandra Clare have a little bit of that problematic aspect, and so I am really uncomfortable with the idea of supporting their writing. So I don't read the books or see movies based on their books. I don't read Cassandra Clare's books. There's been a movie, and now there's a TV series, which I haven't seen. If you've seen it, let me know. in the comments what you think about it. Like I said, it's really about being integritous and knowing who I am as a fan and knowing what I want to support as a participant in fandoms. So that was a lot of talking about probably more shades of gray than you thought that I had hidden deep in my soul. But ultimately, we all have to make the choice about what we're going to support with our time and with our money. And if you have different views, let me know. I'm happy to hear opposing viewpoints and other information. So thanks. Talk to you guys later.